I still remember the sharp, crushing weight in my chest. It came out of nowhere, like a storm tearing through a quiet day. One minute I was standing at my desk, trying to finish another late report before the deadline. The next, the room blurred, my knees gave out, and I was gasping for air as the floor rushed up to meet me. The last thing I heard before the world went dark was a coworker screaming my name. When I woke in the hospital, disoriented, wires strapped to me, the doctor said words that should have terrified my family. She collapsed at work. We called her son a broken bar, but he never came. Never came. My son. My own flesh and blood. The boy I raised with sleepless nights and endless sacrifices. The one I thought would always be there. Instead, silence. At first, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he didn't answer because he was at work. Maybe his phone had died. Maybe, just maybe, he didn't get the message. But when the nurse handed me my phone, I saw it. A notification from social media. A post from my daughter-in-law. A photo of her smiling with her friends at some cafe. Copyright. The caption burned into my chest deeper than the pain of my collapse. Finally, a day without the drama queen. Middle.ao diaresis. My vision blurred with tears. She was talking about me. Mocking me. While I lay in a hospital bed. And my son? He liked the post. He even commented with a laughing emoji. That was the moment something inside me broke. That was the moment something inside me broke. The chest pain I felt wasn't just from collapsing at work anymore, it was from realizing my own son had chosen silence, and his wife had chosen cruelty. I lay in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. Every beep of the monitor reminded me that my body was fragile, but the ache in my soul was worse. I kept replaying their laughter in my mind, imagining my daughter-in-law clinking glasses, mocking me like I was nothing more than a burden. And my son, and my sweet boy who once held my hand when crossing the street, he stood by her. The nurse asked if anyone was coming for me. I forced a smile and said, "No, I'll be fine." My voice cracked on the word fine. I wasn't fine. I stayed in the hospital overnight, and no one came. Not a single call from them. Not even a text asking how I was doing. I stared at my phone until my eyes burned, waiting for the screen to light up. Nothing. By morning, I had made a decision. If they wanted a life without me, if they saw me as the drama queen, then they would see how quiet things could get when I stopped carrying the weight they never noticed I carried. When I was discharged, I walked into my empty home and sat at the dining table, staring at the photos on the wall. Family pictures. My son's graduation. Their wedding. Holidays when I cooked for everyone, pouring my heart into every dish. Memories that now felt like lies. And then my gaze shifted to the file cabinet in the corner. Inside were the deeds, the papers, the things they thought would one day be theirs. The house. The land. The savings I built through years of working double shifts. They joked about it sometimes, as if my hard work was simply their inheritance waiting on a silver platter. That's when the thought came to me. A sharp, clear thought that cut through the fog of my pain: I can change the ending of this story. So I picked up the phone. Just one call. That's all it took to start the process. One call to the realtor. One call to the bank. One call that would flip their smug laughter into shock. Days passed, and I said nothing to them. I went about my routine quietly, even as the paperwork moved forward. I signed documents they didn't know existed, with a calmness that surprised me. Each signature was like sewing a stitch into my broken heart, mending myself one page at a time. The night before the sale was finalized, I checked their social media again. My daughter-in-law had posted another photo, this time of their dinner out. The caption read, "Cheers to peace and no nagging calls from certain people. Ethyaneo diaresis." My hands shook, not from weakness, but from a fire inside me. They had no idea the rug was about to be pulled from under them. The next morning, I signed the last paper. My house, their supposed inheritance, was sold. The land? Gone. The savings? Redirected. I sat back in the chair and exhaled. A deep, steadying breath. I felt lighter, stronger. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being used. When they finally call it a "oh yes," they call it a, it wasn't to check on me. It was to ask about the property. My son's voice was casual at first. "Hey Mom, we were just talking about the backyard. Maybe we could start fixing it up this summer, since one day it'll be ours anyway." I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. "Oh sweetheart," I said softly, "about that backyard, a broken bar, it isn't yours." "Not anymore." "None of it is." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then a sharp, "What do you mean?" "I sold it," I said calmly. "The house. The land. Everything you thought was yours one day. It's gone." I could almost hear his wife in the background, shrieking, demanding explanations. My son's voice cracked, "Why would you do that?" I closed my eyes and let the words roll off my tongue like silk, because when I collapsed, you never came. And when I needed family, all I got was a photo calling me a drama queen. "So tell me now, a broken bar, who's the dramatic one?" I hung up before he could answer. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. After I hung up the phone, I just sat there in silence. For once, the silence didn't hurt. It wasn't the heavy silence of being ignored, or the bitter silence of waiting for a call that would never come. It was peaceful, cleansing, a broken bar, the kind of silence that comes after a storm. I brewed myself a cup of tea, the steam curling in the quiet kitchen. I thought back to all the years I had given, years when I stretched every dollar so my son could have new shoes for school, years when I went without so he could have more. The nights I stayed up sewing costumes, baking cakes, cheering at games. The times I worked double shifts so he could go on field trips and never feel left out. I remembered him as a little boy, running to me with scraped knees, whispering, "Mom, you make it better." I used to believe that bond was unbreakable. But people grow. Or maybe they change. Or maybe they reveal who they truly are when life no longer demands their loyalty. My son and his wife thought they had me figured out. They thought I was weak. They thought I would always be there, holding the safety net beneath them, giving until I had nothing left. They laughed at me. Called me names. Took my presence for granted. But they forgot something, a broken bar, even the quietest people have a breaking point. I checked my phone again. There were more messages now. My son's voice notes, shaky and angry, asking if I was serious. My daughter-in-law's texts, a long, venomous paragraphs accusing me of betrayal, of being selfish, of ruining their future. I laughed. A deep, surprising laugh that bubbled out of me like it had been waiting years to be set free. Selfish? Was it selfish to finally claim back my own life? Was it selfish to keep what I earned with my own sweat and pain, instead of handing it over to people who spat on me when I was down? I thought about the words she used in her cruel post, a drama queen. I had been called many things in my life, tired, stubborn, even stronger, but never that. I wasn't the drama queen. They were. Posting for attention, mocking someone who gave them everything, parading their cruelty for the world to see. And yet, I realized, maybe being dramatic wasn't such a bad thing after all. Maybe, for once, it was my turn to put on a performance. My one act of defiance. My one grand exit from their stage. The realtor called later that afternoon to confirm the sale had gone through. It was done. Final. Irreversible. I felt my chest rise with relief, no heaviness, no regret. That night, I sat in my living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes and fading photographs, and I let the tears come in, not out of sadness, but out of release. Out of freedom. For years, I thought my worth was tied to what I could give my son. That if I stopped giving, I stopped being a good mother. But lying in that hospital bed, scrolling through their cruel laughter, I realized something: my worth had never belonged to them. It belonged to me. And now, for the first time, I was keeping it. The next weekend, my neighbor stopped by. A kind woman, always checking in on me. She asked if I was nervous about moving. I smiled and said, "Number." Not nervous. Excited. It's the start of something new. She tilted her head, curious, and I told her just a little about what had happened. Her face softened with sympathy, but then hardened with something else: a respect. She patted my hand and said, "Good for you." Sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is stop letting her children hurt her. Her words stayed with me. My son kept calling, but I didn't answer. My daughter-in-law posted vague messages online, complaints about greedy parents and ungrateful elders. I didn't respond to those either. Let them shout into the void. Let them stew in their own bitterness. I had no energy left to waste. Instead, I focused on myself. On healing. On breathing without the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Every box I packed was another reminder that I was leaving behind not just a house, but a lifetime of being undervalued. Every drawer I emptied was like emptying a wound, letting it heal. By the time moving day came, I felt lighter than I had in years. The house was no longer theirs, no longer mine either. It was simply a chapter one had finished. I climbed into the moving van, looked back one last time, and whispered, "Who's the dramatic one now?" And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I felt powerful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. It didn't take long before the knock came at my door. Loud. Sharp. Angry. I didn't even need to look through the peephole to know who it was. I opened the door slowly, and there they were, my son and his wife. His face was tight, his jaw clenched. She stood half a step behind him, arms crossed, eyes blazing. "Mom," he said, his voice low but shaking, "tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't sell the house." I stood there, calm as ever. I didn't answer right away. I just let the silence stretch, long enough for him to start shifting on his feet, long enough for her to huff impatiently. Finally, I said, "It's true." Her arms flew up in outrage. "Are you insane? That house was supposed to be ours. We've been planning for years. You knew we were going to move in eventually. How could you just throw it all away like that?" I tilted my head, studying her. "Funny," I said quietly. "You call it ours, but it was never yours. It was mine. I bought it. I worked for it. I paid every bill. You didn't lift a finger." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh please, you're being dramatica." I cut her off, my voice sharp as glass. "Don't you dare. You think you can call me a drama queen while I'm lying in a hospital bed fighting for a breath? You think you can laugh at me when I collapse at work? And then come here demanding something you never earned?" Her face went pale. My son stepped forward, trying to put his hand on my arm, but I pulled back. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to touch me like a loving son when you couldn't even show up when I needed you most. The doctors called you. I nearly died. And where were you? Out liking her post." His mouth opened, but no words came. He looked away, shame flickering across his face. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You both showed me exactly where I stand in your lives. So I made sure you'll never again assume where you stand in mine." Her voice rose, shrill and desperate now. "You're ruining our future. Do you understand? We counted on that house. We deserved it after everything." I laughed. A bitter, cutting laugh that echoed through the hall. "Deserved it? Tell me, what exactly did you do to deserve it? Did you spend nights crying yourself to sleep because you couldn't pay the bills but still had to feed your child? Did you work until your hands ached and your back screamed, just so he could have a better life? Did you give up your own dreams, your own comfort, your own health for him? Number. That was me. Every brick in that house was built on my sacrifices. And you call it yours?" She froze, her lips pressed tight, her eyes darting away. I turned to my son, softer now but still firm. "I loved you more than my own life. But when I needed you, you didn't come. That broke something inside me. And I can't give to people who only know how to take." He whispered, "Mama broken bar, I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I let myself feel the ache of those words, the ache of hearing them too late. Then I opened them again, steady. "I'm sorry too. But some wounds don't heal with apologies." And then I did the one thing they never expected. I closed the door. The sound of it shutting was final. Like the last page of a book slamming shut. I leaned against it, breathing deeply, my hands trembling but not with fear. With power. With release. Outside, I could still hear their voices, muffled with anger and desperation. But inside, I felt peace. For once, I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the silent one. I was the one who had taken control. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself another cup of tea, and let myself smile. Because this time, I wasn't the one begging to be loved. This time, they were the ones left out in the cold. If this story has you hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more true-to-life stories that will leave you thinking. After they left, the house felt heavier, like all their shouting had soaked into the walls. But instead of sadness, I felt a strange calm, as if I had finally stepped out of a cage I hadn't even known I was trapped in. I sat by the window and let my mind wander back through the years. Sometimes revenge isn't only about payback, it's also about remembering every little sacrifice, every moment of silence where you swallowed your pain just to keep the peace. I thought about the time when my son was 10 and wanted to join the baseball team. The uniform cost money I didn't have. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my bills, trying to figure out what to cut. In the end, I skipped paying the electric bill on time so I could afford that uniform. For a week, we lived by candlelight, pretending it was an adventure. He never knew the truth. I thought about when he was 16, begging for a car. I sold my wedding ring and the one piece of jewelry that still carried a memory of Lavia just to buy him a used car so he wouldn't feel embarrassed around his friends. He never knew what it cost me. And then a broken bar. I worked nights cleaning offices, scrubbing floors until my knees swelled, just so his tuition was paid. I remember crying in the bathroom at 3 a.m. because I was so tired, but still dragging myself to work. He never asked where the money came from. Every single time, I gave. And I told myself it was worth it because he was my son. Because one day, he would understand. One day, he would look back and see everything I had poured into his life. But that day never came. Instead, when I collapsed, when my body finally gave in to the years of exhaustion, he didn't show up. He didn't even call. He just laughed at a cruel joke made by the woman he chose to marry. And maybe that was the hardest truth of all, it wasn't just about him ignoring me. It was about him choosing her over me. Choosing cruelty over love. I took a slow sip of my tea and whispered to myself, never again. The following week, word spread among family and neighbors that I had sold the house. Some called me brave. Some whispered that I was reckless. My sister phoned me, her voice heavy with concern. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "That house was everything you built." I smiled softly, even though she couldn't see me. "No," I said. "My life was everything I built. The house was just walls and wood. And it stopped feeling like home the moment my own son mocked me through silence." She was quiet for a long time. Then she sighed and said, "I'm proud of you. Most people wouldn't have the strength to do what you did." Her words wrapped around me like a blanket. For once, I felt seen. But the storm with my son wasn't over. A few days later, he called again. This time, his voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "Mom," he said quietly. "I messed up. I should have come to the hospital. I don't know why I didn't. I guess I thought you were exaggerating, and a broken bar." I listened to her. I swallowed hard. His words pierced me because they were the closest thing to an admission I had ever heard from him. But even then, it wasn't enough. "You chose to believe someone who mocked me over the woman who raised you," I said softly. "Do you understand how that feels?" There was a long silence. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. For years, I had dreamed of hearing that. And yet, when it finally came, it didn't heal me. Because apologies mean little when they arrive too late. "I know," I said. My voice shook, but I held firm. "But sorry doesn't change who you are now. And it doesn't erase what you did." He tried again, desperate. "What about the house? Couldn't you a broken bar undo it?" That was when I knew his apology wasn't for me. It was for what he had lost. My hand trembled as I held the phone, but my voice stayed steady. The house is gone. And so is the version of me who would have sacrificed everything for you. You'll have to live with both. Before he could answer, I hung up. I sat there in the quiet, my chest heavy with grief but also strangely light with freedom. This was my line in the sand. This was where the old me ended and the new me began. And though the pain of betrayal lingered, I felt something else blooming inside me too. Strength. For once, I wasn't just surviving. I was living for myself. After that call, I started sleeping with my phone in the kitchen drawer. I didn't want to wake to the sound of apologies that were really negotiations. I didn't want to see new posts or new comments or new ways of being made small. If I woke in the night, I let the darkness sit with me like an old friend. I breathed. I counted the seconds it took for my heart to calm. The body remembers how to heal once you stop handing it reasons to break. The days took on a rhythm. Tea. A walk. Boxes. A small stack of books I promised myself I would finally read. I learned the exact time the sunlight moved across the living room floor. I ate at the table, not over the sink. I put flowers in a jar and didn't apologize to myself for spending the money. I made soup. I called my sister and we laughed about nothing and everything. She said my voice sounded lighter. I told her I was trying to become a person again, not a reservoir everyone drank from. Word travels even when you do not speak. My cousin sent a message. I saw her post. I'm sorry. I thanked him and changed the subject. My neighbor left a cheesecake at my door with a note that said, "For the next first." I ate a slice right then and there with a spoon, standing over the counter, and I cried because it felt like a blessing to be thought of without being needed. My son texted photos of a fixer-upper they wanted me to help co-sign. The arrogance made my hands go cold. He hadn't even asked how I was healing. I typed and erased and typed again before finally sending 5 words, "I'm not doing that anymore." He replied with a question mark, as if my refusal were a typo. Then he wrote, "She says you owe us." The quiet after that message felt like snow falling. I set the phone face down and whispered, "I don't owe you my life." I went to the clinic for my follow-up. The doctor asked about stress. I laughed softly and said, "I'm downsizing my stress." He smiled like he had heard worse plans. On the way home I stopped by the thrift store and bought a small oak chair with a scar along the arm. It felt honest. I strapped it in the passenger seat like a passenger, like a friend coming home. The daughter-in-law kept posting cryptic quotes about toxic elders. A boomerang video of a wine glass. A selfie taken from above, lips pressed, eyes bored. I didn't answer. I didn't go to war in the comments section. I let the world be loud without me. But I kept every screenshot. I kept them not as evidence for others, but as evidence for myself on weekdays, so I would never again rewrite the story to make my pain small. On Sunday, I cooked for myself like company was coming. Roasted potatoes, rosemary, garlic, chicken with lemon. I set one place and a linen napkin. I put on the good music, the kind that makes a room feel tender. I ate slowly. I thanked the food. I thanked the quiet. I thanked every version of me who kept showing up when no one else did. My aunt called that night and asked me to explain what happened because people are talking. I told her the truth in one sentence. When the doctor called my son from the hospital, he didn't come, but his wife posted a picture that said, finally, a day without the drama queen." There was a long pause on the line, the kind where you can hear someone changing their mind about you. "Oh," she said. "Oh." She cleared her throat. "You don't have to explain a thing to me." The first time I bumped into my son alone, it was at the grocery store. He looked thinner, somehow smaller, like his choices had trimmed him down. We faced each other between canned tomatoes and paper towels. He tried to smile. His hands kept touching and untouching the cart handle. "Mom," he said. "You look good." It sounded like a guess. "I'm trying," I said. He looked at the floor. "I should have come." "Yes," I said. "You should have." "I don't know why I didn't." She said it was probably nothing. She said you very broken bar, you know. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. "Do you believe everything she says, or only the parts that hurt me?" I asked. My voice was calm. I was surprised by that. He flinched like I'd struck him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Sorry lives in the mouth," I said. "Change lives in the calendar." We stood a moment in the hum of the store. "How's your heart?" I asked finally. "Loud," he said. "And empty." "Mine too," I said. "But I am learning to fill it with myself." He nodded in the way of someone who wants to run but knows he can't. "Can we talk?" "Like really talk?" "Not here," I said. "And not with her." He didn't argue. That was new. He said he would call. I said I wouldn't wait by the phone. Back home, I opened the family group chat. The cousins, the aunties, the uncles who tell the same joke every year. The chat had been buzzing for days, full of sideways questions and throat-clearing concern. I wrote only one message: I sold the house. I am safe. This screenshot is why. I attached the post. I turned my phone off and put it in a drawer. I made tea. I watered the plants. I wiped down the stove. When I turned my phone back on, most of the messages were hearts, prayers, come over, we love you. A few were scoldings dressed as care. I blocked the ones that hurt. I slept well. I signed the lease on a small apartment near the old park where I used to push my son on the swing. The landlord was a woman with bright eyes and a listening face. She said, "You'll like it here. It's quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't leave you alone, just lets you be." I believed her. The floors creaked in the kind way. The windows looked east. Morning light made soft squares on the rug. On moving day, a teenage boy from down the hall offered to help carry boxes. He introduced himself as Milo and said he was saving for a bass guitar. He handled my boxes like they were full of feathers. I gave him an extra 20 and a plate of cookies and told him to keep his back straight when he lifted. He grinned and said, "Yes, ma'am," and then asked if I liked old soul music. We made a deal: he could practice on Sundays if he played me one song at the end. The building felt like a quilt. Every neighbor a square. I went for long walks and came home with small things: a pine cones, a smooth stone, a leaf the color of late peaches. I lined them along the windowsill. I called the realtor and asked her to transfer a portion of the proceeds to a savings account I named Candlelight. It made me smile to see the word in my banking app. I told myself that money would be for things that fed the soul: lessons, travel, classes, a rainy day gift to my future self who would need a little mercy. My sisters said, "You should do something in Dad's name." The idea clicked into place like a puzzle piece. He'd worked 2 jobs and always kept a $5 bill in his pocket to hand to anyone who needed it. I sat at the table with a pen and a stack of paper and sketched the outline of a small scholarship. 1 award a year to a kid raised by a single parent who wanted to study anything that made their face light up. I named it after my father's habit, the $5 Start Fund. The bank manager cried when I opened the account. I cried too. We laughed at our wet faces. When the news of the scholarship reached the family, most cheered. A few muttered that I was making a point. Maybe I was. Maybe the point was that money should move where love lives. My son didn't say a word. His wife posted a meme about being cut out of an evil plan. I muted her and lit a candle for the parts of me that still wanted her to be kind. I started volunteering one afternoon a week at the clinic that had treated me, folding gowns, refilling water pitchers, wheeling blankets to patients whose hands shook. I made eye contact. I said names gently. I watched fear loosen its grip when someone was handled with care. The nurse who had held my hand the night I woke up recognized me. She squeezed my fingers and said, "Look at you." I said, I needed to look at me, too. We laughed. One evening, my son called while I was shelling peas. I let it ring twice before I answered. He said, "I'm outside. Can we talk?" Something in his voice made me put on my shoes. He stood near the mailbox, shoulders rounded, hands empty. Without her. He didn't try to hug me. We walked to the bench at the end of the block. The sycamore above us had peeled skin like old paint. Wind lifted its flakes. "I left," he said. It took a second for the words to land. "Left what?" "Her," he said, and his face crumpled. I heard myself around her. I didn't like the man I was. I felt a strange mix of relief, anger, grief for the time that could have been different. "Why are you telling me?" I asked. "Because I want to start over," he said. "Not with money. With behavior." I stared at his hands. They were my father's hands. Capable and stubborn. "Behavior is heavy," I said. "You'll have to carry it every day." "I know," he said. "I want to try." I didn't rush to fill the silence like I used to when he was a boy and tears meant I should fix everything. I let the silence test us. The sky bruised toward evening. A dog barked. Somewhere a screen door closed. He told me small things. How he'd been anxious for years. How the quick shot of approval online felt like care, even if it came from cruelty. How he'd turned me into a bank because he didn't know how to grow a wallet. How shame kept him away when he should have come closer. He didn't excuse. He explained. It did not heal me. It made room for healing. "What do you want from me right now?" I asked. He swallowed. "Permission to earn you back." "You don't need my permission," I said. "You need my boundaries." He nodded like a student memorizing a lesson. "Tell me what to do." "You show up," I said. You apologize without asking for something after. You keep my name out of your jokes. You don't let anyone you love talk about me like I'm a punchline. You call when it's ordinary, not only when it's urgent. You go to therapy. You learn to sit in your own discomfort without kicking it into my chest. You came to volunteer with me at the clinic once a month. Not to impress me, just to practice care. He wrote every word in his phone. He looked up and said, "Can I take you to breakfast next Saturday?" I said yes. He cried a little. I touched his shoulder. We walked back in the tender dark. I did not tell him about the will that now sent the rest of the money to the scholarship when I was gone. I did not tell him about the letter I had written to myself promising never to trade my peace for anyone's comfort again. Those things were mine. Not because I was hiding. Because I was finally allowed to have a private life inside my own skin, a room that belonged to me. The fallout continued, of course. His wife via ex-wife, Suninoua, sent messages with edges sharp enough to cut. I didn't read them. I mailed her the potholder her grandmother had crocheted and the scarf I had given her that she said made her itch. I included a note with 4 words, "I release my part." The package closed a door I no longer needed to guard. At the clinic, I learned to fold fitted sheets so that they cooperated. I learned the names of the night shift janitors. I learned that grief sits easier when someone notices your water is empty and fills it without asking why you let it run dry. On the bulletin board, a volunteer had pinned a quote, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." I copied it into my notebook and underlined simultaneously 3 times. Breakfast with my son was awkward in the way new shoes rub a blister before they soften. He fumbled with the menu and finally said, "Order for me like when I was little." I smiled and ordered pancakes, extra butter, bacon too crispy, coffee with cream. He laughed when the plate arrived the way he used to when a magician revealed a coin from behind his ear. He told me about a job he'd taken in nothing fancy, steady hours, honest work. He said he'd found a small room to rent. He said he scrubbed it clean and felt proud. I said, pride is a broom that sweeps a life back into shape. We ate in a quiet that didn't hurt. The scholarship fund announced its first recipient on a Saturday in June. The award went to a girl with paint on her hands and ambition in her eyes. Her mother hugged me and didn't let go for a long time. "You don't know what this means," she said into my hair. "I do," I said. "That's why I made it." The girl promised to send me pictures of her canvases. A local paper wrote a tiny article. The photographer asked me to stand next to the giant check. I did, but only after asking them to put the girl in the center. It was never about me. It was about moving love forward. Later that afternoon, I stood on my balcony with a glass of iced tea and looked out at the street. Milo leaned against the stoop playing something slow. A dog dragged its owner in polite circles. A boy in a red helmet learned to balance. My phone buzzed. A text from my son, at the clinic. "First time. I'm nervous." I typed back, "Fear means you're near the door that matters. Walk through." 30 minutes later, a photo came. He was in a paper gown holding a stack of blankets and smiling like a person who had remembered what hands are for. I realized my revenge had never been about hurting him. It was about refusing to be hurt by him again. Selling the house was part of that. It was one loud, clear sentence after a life of ellipses. It said, I will not bankroll my own erasure. I will not pay rent to live small in a home I built. That night I recorded my own story for the first time, not to plead my case, but to place it on a shelf I could reach. I spoke slowly so I could hear every word. I said, I am worthy of care that does not ask me to shrink to fit someone else's narratives. I am not a drama queen. I am the quiet architect of my own peace. When I finished, I played it back. My voice sounded like someone I would be friends with. If this story is resonating with you right now, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps these true-to-life stories reach someone who needs the courage to set a boundary today. Weeks later, my son knocked again. He held a small box. Inside was the car key from high school, the one I had bought by selling my wedding ring. He said, I found it and wanted to return it. I smiled and pushed the box back into his hands. Keep it, I said. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Let it jingle in your pocket when you feel the old habits scratching. Let it ask you who you want to be. He told me he had apologized to the nurse who'd called him that day and to the supervisor at my old job who had sat with me until the ambulance came. He showed me the messages not to prove, but to witness. He had scheduled therapy. He had unflowed accounts that sharpened his tongue. He had written a letter to his ex-wife that didn't insult or accuse, it only said, I won't be cruel anymore, even when I'm scared. I nodded. I didn't praise like a prize. I said, good. Keep going. His eyes softened in a way I hadn't seen since he was 10. I made us grilled cheese and tomato soup. He told me a joke so bad I laughed until I had to wipe my eyes. When he left, he hugged me like a person who knows hugs are loans you should repay with interest. I stood in the doorway a long time after he walked away. Not waiting. Just grateful. The daughter-in-law sent me one last message months later. It wasn't kind, but it wasn't cruel either. It said, I didn't know how to share him. I typed back, that wasn't your job. It was his. I wished her well and put her name in a jar of people I light a candle for when it rains. I don't want her back in my life. I want her to find a place where she doesn't have to be sharp to feel whole. The scholarship girl emailed a photo of her first show of small canvases, big light. She wrote, I painted a lemon the way your chicken tasted in my memory. I laughed at the screen and decided to buy the lemon painting if it was still there. I imagined it in my kitchen, bright as a new morning. Sometimes I drive past the old house. I do it like visiting a school where you learned everything you could. I park across the street and watch the windows glow with someone else's life. I do not feel replaced. I feel graduated. When I think about that day at work, the floor rushing up, the ceiling spinning away, the doctor saying, we called your son. He never came, I don't break. I remember. And memory does not own me anymore. It informs me. It says, believe who people tell you they are the first time they show you. Believe yourself the first time you whisper, this hurts. On the anniversary of the sale, I took a bus to the ocean. I brought a peanut butter sandwich and a thermos of coffee, because grand gestures exhaust me and the sea prefers simple offerings. I sat on the sand and let the wind put my hair in my mouth. A little boy pointed at the water and shouted, it's moving. I laughed and said, it always is. I wrote a letter to my younger self who sat in the kitchen by candlelight pretending it was an adventure. I told her the truth, You are allowed to keep the things you build. You are allowed to walk away from the table where you are the meal. You are allowed to be done. I folded the letter and tucked it into my notebook. I didn't need to throw it into the waves. The ocean already knows. On the ride home, the bus rattled like a song with loose percussion. I thought about the word dramatic. I turned it over like a shell in my pocket. The drama was never me. The drama was a life where I had to collapse to be taken seriously. The drama was believing that love meant I should disappear. The drama was a photograph raised like a toast to my absence. Now, the only drama I allow is sunrise and laughter and the sudden rush of a choir when the harmony lands. Back in my apartment, I lit a candle and set out 2 cups. One for me now. One for me then. I whispered thank you to both. I scrolled to the video app and recorded a short message for anyone who finds themselves sitting alone at a table set for a family who will not show up. I said, you do not have to keep paying rent in a story that starves you. Sell the house they live in inside your chest. Use the money to buy yourself back. If you stayed with me to the end, remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It tells the algorithm that stories of courage and boundaries matter, and it helps someone who needs this find it tonight. I am not the drama queen. I am the quiet queen of a small kingdom, a window, a chair with a scar, a scholarship that turns $5 into a door, a son trying every day to be brave, a life that fits. And you, if you were here with me, what would you keep, what would you sell, and where would you draw the line so your heart could finally breathe?